Okay, Bally Sports has now been officially rebranded as FanDuel Sports. So the ongoing concerns in regards to the regional sports broadcasters in the US continues. Bally's parent company, Diamond Sports Entertainment, I believe it is their company name, have entered bankruptcy. We know about this. We've been discussing this for some time. And what we do know is that as part of the bankruptcy restructuring and their proposal for bankruptcy restructuring, that they were going to drop a lot of the regional broadcasts of the major leagues, of the NHL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball. With Major League Baseball, only the Atlanta Braves were guaranteed to have what was Bally Sports, which is now FanDuel, as a broadcast partner for next season. The Minnesota Twins, they were open to the idea of potentially renegotiating and looking at potential new partners as well. The other teams have basically have lost their regional broadcaster in Bally, who were part of the Bally Sports network, and are more than likely going to sign up with the Major League Baseball streaming service that Rob Manfred, as commissioner, wants to set up and put in place to replace the loss of Bally Sports and those local TV contracts. Now, FanDuel's coming. They are a gambling firm, much like Bally's, which is a casino chain. FanDuel is a gambling app. It's a gambling website. They've stepped up and taken over the broadcast rights. They've rebranded the network. It's going to be interesting to see how much gambling advertising we see on a live sports broadcast or a highlights package as well. Now, as someone who watches a lot of the NRL, and the NRL as rugby league is heavily reliant on the gambling industry for a lot of its ad revenue and team sponsors. It's the same with the AFL. It's the same with European football. Although here in the UK, there's legislation coming in and plans to restrict gambling sponsors on Premier League teams and Championship teams. The problem is some of the gambling firms actually own teams. So Stoke City, for example, are owned by Bet365, and their stadium is now called the Bet365 Stadium. So some teams have got these big sponsorship agreements with gambling companies. I just use them as an example. The Brisbane Broncos in Australia and the NRL, Ladbrokes, which is a British company, but their Australian subsidiary is the main sponsor of the Brisbane Broncos. The Manly Sea Eagles, for example, it's PointsBet. So there are these big, well-known gambling companies that are title sponsors of teams, title sponsors of the stadium, or they've got a secondary sponsor, and it's very noticeable. Now, as I say, in the UK here where I'm based, there is legislation coming in, and certain leagues are saying, right, we're going to reduce the amount of gambling sponsorship we have. If we've got a jersey sponsor or a team sponsor after 2026, especially in Europe, in English football, that's going to disappear in the Premier League. Whether that happens to the Championship, League One and League Two and the non-league, we will see. We know in Scotland they haven't signed up to that agreement. But we are seeing political pushback and public pushback against the amount of gambling, sponsorship and advertising that we see. And there is going to be changes coming in the next couple of years. Now, on the US side of things, firstly, Warner Brothers Discovery, which owned Comcast Sportsnet, pulled out of the local broadcasting a couple of years ago. But then that same Warner Brothers Discovery bought BT Sport here in the UK and rebranded it as TNT Sports here. They buy a TV company that's losing money, but they're losing money in the US. Make it make sense. I can't, but they pull out the US sports market and invest in the UK and Ireland sports market. Make it make sense, because I can't. Now, Fox was ultimately bought by Disney. Disney owns ESPN, so the Fox broadcast disappeared, became Bally's. Bally's basically took over, the broadcast rights. Seamless transition. It was just a rebrand, which is basically what FanDuel are doing here with Bally's. They're taking over the transmission. They're taking over the local markets in that regard. Now, what we do know is, as part of Bally's parent company Diamond's bankruptcy restructuring, as I say, a lot of sports teams have lost their local broadcaster, which is going to impact the NHL, going to impact the NBA, and it's going to impact Major League Baseball. I think Major League Baseball is probably the most at risk of losing massive amounts of money here. 1/4 of Major League Baseball's revenues come from the local sports, broadcast arrangements and contracts. As I say, Major League Baseball, the Atlanta Braves is the only Major League Baseball team that will be signed up with FanDuel, formerly Bally's. We know the Minnesota Twins, there's uncertainty about the ownership of the Minnesota Twins, and they are looking at potentially another local broadcaster coming in at a reduced rate of what they were earning, and they are a small market team. They make a lot less money than the league average when it comes to revenue, so that's going to hit them really badly. And if you think about it, a quarter of the league's revenues come from the local sports TV networks, so it is a big concern. Now, whether FanDuel, as the new name of the network, come along and decide to renegotiate some of the value of the deals that Bally's pulled, or enter negotiations with the leagues in regards to the regional broadcasts, we shall see, and how much they're worth. We know FanDuel's obviously a big gambling website, a gambling app. It does sponsor a lot of podcasts, a lot of broadcasts, and it's a well-known gambling firm in the US. Pat McAfee, for example, FanDuel has an arrangement with him. If you follow Pat McAfee and his NFL, podcast and things like that, Pat McAfee show, which is now also part of ESPN's network, which is interesting. But yeah, there is a concern about the amount of gambling advertising and sponsorship. We have seen many high-profile athletes fall foul of breaching gambling rules in recent years and serve lengthy suspensions. Some have had life bans for betting on games in the last 12 months. We know some high-profile football players in Europe, soccer players to North Americans. We know ice hockey players, basketball players, baseball players have all fallen afoul of breaching betting rules. Snooker players, cricket players, rugby league players, rugby union players. This is not isolated to one sport or one team. This is quite a wide-ranging issue and quite an insidious issue. And also we've seen some match-fixing allegations and some suspicious betting patterns, especially in European professional sport. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe 6 years ago, before the pandemic, a Swedish, ice hockey match in the second division was cancelled hours before face-off because of suspicious betting patterns, and players did get suspended. Now, I didn't hear much after that. It seemed to go really, really quiet. They weren't a high-profile team, but even in the Swedish second division of ice hockey, there was alleged match-fixing, dodgy betting patterns. It was quite serious. We've seen many betting scandals in professional sport going back to the Chicago Black Sox scandal, Chicago White Sox of 1919 in the World Series. So this is nothing new. This has been going on for over a century in what we call modern professional sport. So it'll be interesting to see if this increases the amount of gambling ads we're going to see on broadcasts, and if other broadcasters reassess their regional sports packages they have with the major leagues in the US and how much they're worth and how much they're willing to pay for them when they renegotiate, or will we see all the major leagues come up with a streaming service and move away from traditional broadcasting. We also know that Netflix is very, very keen to get into the live sports broadcast market. Obviously Amazon's in there, Hulu's in there, I think Discovery Plus are in there with live sports broadcasts as part of the various TV networks that they're also media networks they're part of. Netflix has made it very, very clear that they are seriously considering signing up a professional sports league to a streaming contract, to a contract to broadcast their sports events, their games or their league or whatever the sport may be. We also know that Netflix has now got WWE rights as of January next year, which was a massive billion-dollar contract that has been signed by Triple H and Netflix. So that's really interesting that they've got pro wrestling. They want to get professional sport. The major leagues, like Major League Baseball, are coming up with their own streaming platforms, taking over broadcasts, or the teams themselves are taking over their broadcasts. But it means they make less money. And then some locations like Minnesota, which is a small Minnesota Twins, for example, they are one of the smaller market teams. They make less revenue. Could this force, for example, Major League Baseball to bring in a salary cap and scrap the luxury tax system? Will this impact the next TV or media rights deal negotiations for all the major leagues? Will the impact be felt across the Atlantic and across the Pacific in places like Australia and the UK and Europe, for example, when these massive media companies that are multinational, when it comes to the next bout of TV and media rights deals, the fact that yet another sports broadcaster has basically gone belly up. We know the next NHL contract, for example, in Canada is going to be worth less money. We know Rogers Sportsnet is not going to be bidding. It's going to be TSN. It's going to be worth less money. So we'll see what happens, but Bally Sports has been rebranded as FanDuel Sports. So there we go. Place your thoughts on it in the comments section below. I'd be very interested to hear from my North American viewers what your thoughts on Bally Sports' basically collapse and FanDuel stepping up to take over broadcast rights, and what does this mean for the future of broadcast rights when it comes to professional sport? Are we going to go streaming only? Is traditional broadcasting dead? Can the main national broadcasters pick up some of the slack, and will that impact the next round of media rights deals that get signed? Have we seen a plateauing of the traditional media rights deals we have in place? Will they be worth less money in the future? There's a lot to consider here, but there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.